My name is Jiles Smith, and welcome to our community. Welcome to this week's edition of Our Community. We're happy to have Phyllis Morris-Green, our County Public Defender, here with us today. How you doing, Phyllis?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Let's jump right into the question. What does the Public Defender Office do?
Well, the Public Defender's Office, although we are a county agency, we are also a law firm. In fact, you can say that we're the largest law firm in San Bernardino County. We represent indigent individuals on cases in adult court where they're charged with crimes and they cannot afford an attorney. We represent juveniles. Juveniles are individuals under the age of 18 who are charged with criminal offenses in our juvenile courts. And we also represent individuals who are looking at a civil commitment, i.e. a stay in a state hospital setting.
I didn't know about the last one. It's very interesting. Right. In November 2012, the Board of Supervisors correctly, in my opinion, appointed you to the new public defender. What has been the biggest challenge, or some of your biggest challenges in your new role?
Well, the biggest challenge that I believe is facing the county and any county department was the budget and basically asking your employees to do more with less.
Well, speaking of the budget, what is your budget and how many attorneys do you have?
We have a total of 241 employees. Of that group, 128, that includes our managers, our attorneys. 32 are investigators. We have a clerical staff and we have an IT staff and what we call an imaging team. Our budget is around, going into next fiscal year, is around $35.1 million.
It's enough to do the job, right?
It's never enough to do the job. The budget includes some grant funding and it also includes monies related to AB 109 activity.
Well, in a recent interview, you made a very fascinating statement. You talked about your rise in the system and you pointed out at the end that your goal was always to be the best. And you basically didn't use as a crutch or a something positive, your sex nor your race. You just kept working hard. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, you know, I grew up in a environment, first of all, as a child, where I loved school. I excelled in school, and excelling in school often yielded me nothing more than a C. And a C was given to me on the basis of my skin color, not necessarily on my abilities. But in spite of all of that, you know, I've learned that life isn't fair at a very young age, and despite what factors you are faced with, you always have to put your best foot forward. By putting your best foot forward, you will be able to compete. And so, you know, I never wanted to be in a position where someone says, well, she got the job because she's black. Because for me, the implication is she's black, but she's not qualified. I always wanted to be qualified for whatever it is I chose to do. And I wanted people to know that if you put me in a position and you believe that I'm qualified, I'm going to show you that I'm qualified. I'm going to follow through. I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. I don't like to have to do an activity. If I'm going to make a commitment to an activity, I want to do it to the best of my ability. And anyone, regardless of their race, should have that attitude, that I'm going to put the best foot forward. Race or your gender should never be an excuse. But unfortunately, at times, they are barriers. And people who are the most qualified have not been selected to certain positions because merely of their race and gender, and that's wrong.
It does happen.
Yes.
And you see that in the courtroom all the time, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a very difficult job. Someone's definitely got to protect those who are less fortunate. Two people do the same crime, and in one part of the state you can get away with it, in another part of the state based on money. Not necessarily race all the time. O.J. Simpson is a perfect example.
Correct.
You can get away with something possibly, that's my opinion, everybody, that you otherwise people would think you did. So it's interesting. That's a powerful message for our children as well, to basically keep your nose down and keep pushing forward and not take those challenges as a hurdle that you can't get over, right?
Right. Always put your best foot forward. It's never an excuse not to do your best.
So you do talk up to children about that in your rounds. You do go out and talk to kids about that.
We do have we meaning the Public Defender's Office. We do have a speakers bureau. We will go out to schools, community agencies. We also host Law Day, and we use that as a forum to speak to kids throughout the county.
What are some of the key initiatives that your department has?
Well, if I'm going to interpret that question as what are the goals that we have?
I can definitely tell I'm talking to an attorney right now.
Right. Where the goals, our goal is to provide the best representation that we can for all of our clients. But then, of course, we have issues that we have to address. The realignment environment. We have to address the various issues, whether it be with our juvenile clients, with our adult clients. We certainly have mental health issues in all areas. So those are things that we focus on. But our goal is one of community service. We want to help people, and one of the things that the economic downturn has allowed us to do is to focus on reentry integration, in a sense of how do you help people that may have a felony conviction become employable or obtain licenses, things of that sort.
Let's talk about that for a second, because we had a great opportunity to partner with you last year on a record expungement fair. You brought out some great public defenders who really helped out. We had over 300 people to come out who basically just trying to expunge their record. We're not talking about people with major situations, but they can't get that job or can't get that promotion.
Correct.
And they were disenfranchised, if you will, in the system. Yes, they committed these acts for the most part, but they needed a helping hand. Correct. So your department helps us out with that as well, right?
Correct. We do a lot of, when I use the term expungement, it's not truly an expungement process. The conviction does not disappear. It's an expungement process for purposes of employment. And basically, if an individual received probation, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor case, and they successfully complete probation, they can go before the court and ask the court to withdraw the guilty plea, reinstate the not guilty plea, and then deem the matter to be dismissed. And for purposes of employment, and emphasis on purposes for employment, the employer cannot use that conviction against the individual in terms of job interviews, etc. Now, certainly, you have peace officer positions, probation positions, high security positions. The conviction does not disappear, but for a wide variety of employment, the conviction is no longer held against the client.
So in that situation, if a person committed a second offense, they can clearly see the first one, right?
Well, petty theft is generally a misdemeanor, but let's say you have a grand theft conviction, and you receive an expungement on that, and then you later go out and you commit an embezzlement or something of that sort. If it's what we call a priorable offense, it can now be reinstated and used against you.
Okay. Right. So it's not a true erasal. It just kind of, it gives you a second start. I like that.
It gives you a second start.
And and a lot of people took advantage of that, like I said before. we were blessed to be able to help out those families. We plan to do another one this year. Hopefully we can depend on you to help us out with that.
Yes, yes.
As always, you're always there for the people of our county. Let's talk more about some specifics. AB 109 is some challenges,
Yes.
and I just heard on the radio today about Governor Brown having an attempt to go to maybe the Supreme Court to get some things overturned. They want to release another 10,000 people back, and it's a very difficult situation. You're trying to defend people from going to prison in the first place.
Right.
Or at least defend them, I shouldn't say that, because you're just defending them when they can't afford anything else.
Right, right.
But some people in our county are feeling uneasy that so many people are going back into their communities. Is that affecting your department at all, or is it something that you guys are just working through?
Well, I guess you can say that we're working through, but it is impacting the department in terms of how we handle our cases, and the understanding that this is an opportunity where we can, for a group of clients, find treatment. Usually it's drug rehabilitation, but a lot of our crimes are mental health connected.
Yeah.
You know, where there's a client has an undiagnosed mental illness. So within that treatment environment, you can certainly set up an individual to become to support, I guess that would be the term, to support an individual in their efforts to rehabilitate and to become a member of community. And what I think citizens fail to understand is that an individual may have a drug problem, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the individual loves having that drug problem. They just don't know how to get out. They don't know how to effectively address the problem, because with the problem you have cravings, etc. And they may not have that support system at home. And so now we have an opportunity where we can attempt to set up a sentencing scheme that involves treatment and rehabilitation. It's not just penal anymore. You know, we're not talking about warehousing, what defense attorneys often refer to as warehousing individuals in a locked facility, because once you warehouse, understand that when that individual is due to be released, the individual returns to the community with that same problem.
Right.
And that's the problem. That's why California has had a high recidivism rate, in my opinion, is because we don't address issues. Realignment is forcing us to start addressing issues.
Right. And hopefully try to deal with it before it happens. The best way to close the pipeline now in basic business is to fix it before it happens. When we have youth and juveniles getting into the system, getting into their lifestyle, poor education, the dropout rate in some communities are, 40% plus. So we have to do some things on the front end to prevent them from getting in the system, so that when they go to prison, and we don't want to talk about that as well, this is my own diatribe here, but when you go to prison, you basically become a super criminal. We give you nice weights, you meet the right people, you become, oh, how did you do it, and this is how I did it. So when we get back out, now I learned all these new tricks, I have some expertise, I have some new friends, and just, oh, by the way, go back out.
For some,
yeah.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, look at the unattended consequences of putting a person in prison immediately with a small drug problem. The family suffers, the children suffers. We had a young football league, a young guy on the football team, and we're driving by the prisons. He said, hey, that's where my father stays. And that's all they know.
Yeah. That's all they know. And when you take a parent away from a child, that's trauma that goes unaddressed. We have no resource. Well, we have little. I won't say we have no resources, but we have very few resources in a community that is focused on helping children, especially from families that are financially strapped, with dealing with that trauma. And trauma, we are finding in terms of research, impacts future behavior. Okay, so that trauma now can become a factor that could potentially propel that child towards a criminal lifestyle.
Now let's put this on the screen. California spends 10 times more on corrections in early education. California spends $7.8 billion on corrections to house, feed, supervise criminals. Yet a small fraction of that amount, $784 million, for high-quality early education programs. Any comment on that?
Yes. Basically, and this is interesting because I think that this is what the federal court's trying to tell the governor and the people in the state of California is that you're doing it wrong. You know, when as a citizen, they're looking at the newspaper and they're saying, "Wow, we have to release 10,000 more criminals onto the streets." You know, and I was reading the article and I said, "Well, I think they're telling us you're doing it wrong. What the courts are telling us." You're looking at jails as a solution to your problem. We want you to address the problem in other forms. You can't keep locking people up. And taxpayers, you know, we're talking about the fact that we don't have enough money for schools, education, but yet we always find the money to build new prisons. Well, what is it that the community values? Does the community value housing people in prisons, or does the community value education? Certainly, we want people to value education. Again, there's studies that shows that, you know, for people that engage in a criminal lifestyle, they're dropouts. Right. So, address the dropouts situation. That requires now that you reallocate funding towards truancy and towards education. Don't just educate our children. Let's make sure that our children have a high quality education. Let us make sure that children from low socioeconomic communities have access to classes that deal with STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, so that they can get those high-paying jobs.
And we tend to miss that piece. You actually talked about that. Next question I had was, the children focus on being a basketball player or a football player, and very few of them focus on being an attorney, a doctor, an astronaut. You know, so can you talk about that some more as well?
Our perception tends to be shaped by the media, correct? And our heroes, if you ask a child, who's your hero? It's usually a sports figure, or a actor, actress, or an entertainer of some sort. And we need to change that so that our children have a broader view of role models, okay? That it's okay to be a scientist and a mathematician. Those aren't boring careers. Those are careers that add value to our community, and they add value to our nation, and they allow us to compete nationally and internationally. And we want our kids to be able to compete nationally and internationally. You know, and I'm not saying it's bad to be a basketball star. If you can be that basketball star, be that basketball star. But I'm telling you is that as a community, community leaders tend to be your scientists, your engineer, your teachers, your attorneys, and even the blue collar worker. You know, those are the people who truly make your community into a sustainable community.
As the electrician, the doctor,
the plumber.
Those guys are the ones who really get it done.
Correct.
You're 100% right. Studies show that 60% of all the homicides in the country are directly related to gangs. I'm not sure if that exactly aligns to San Bernardino County, but what do you think about that comment? Is that what you see here in the county?
I think that, I don't know about the 60% figure, but it is fair to say that we do handle a significant percentage of what we call gang-related crimes, whether they're homicides, whether they're car robberies, whether they're assaults. We do handle gang-related crimes. And when I use the term gang-related, I'm talking about the allegation that an individual is involved in a gang. Now, I also believe that there may be some overcharging in terms of what is a gang-related crime. Because certainly an individual could have friends who are members of a gang, but that doesn't necessarily make them a gang member. You can have individuals who may have family members and relatives who are gang members, but that doesn't necessarily make them a gang, and yet we tend to label people through their association. Now, if I grew up with Joe Smo since we were 5 years old, and at some point Joe Smo decides to join a gang, That's not necessarily going to sever my relationship with Joe Smo, but the perception is that because there is an association there, I'm also a gang member, and that's not necessarily true.
It's interesting. Your analysis is right on as far as the perception. A person can be 21 years old from a certain area, can be dressing a certain way.
Correct.
Doesn't necessarily mean they fall in that category. That could just be a person who's perceived to be trendy. Or how about our citizens who have piercings or tattoos? That maybe their own way of expressing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they belong to any sect or group, etc.
Right.
You're 100% right on with that. When you may not be able to comment on this exactly, but I'm very curious. Every time I talk to a public defender, I'm always curious about this. How do you deal when you have to defend someone who may have committed a crime, especially to a child? Do you separate your feelings from the law? How do you deal with those difficult situations?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that as a public defender, I'm not there to judge. I'm not there to judge. I become the voice for that particular person in the courtroom. A lot of times when people ask that question, they see defense work as being black, white. You're guilty or you're not guilty. And sometimes when we go to trial, the issue isn't really one of whether the person is guilty or the person is not guilty. The issue is, what did this person do? Because the Constitution requires that the punishment fits the crime. So first of all, we have to determine, okay, what did the person do? And then what is the proper punishment, which is determined at the sentencing hearing. And then you also have to understand the context which the crime or the alleged crime occurred in. Because the reality is that everyone has a story, and to understand the crime, and when I say story, I'm talking about history. Some people will say, oh, story as in life. No, that's not true. Everyone has a history, and you need to understand that person's history to understand the person's actions, to understand the person's reactions to a particular set of facts.
Man, passion, I love that. There you go. Defend your people.
Well,
like
now
that.
I'm in closing argument.
Close it home. You talked a little bit about mental health issues, and I'm going to touch on that just a little bit because we're going to have a few more minutes to go. But also, it was great to film the sheriff department recently with the gun buyback program.
Yes.
Any opinion about that?
Well, actually, I applaud the sheriff for their buyback program. A significant percentage of our charges that we deal with are related to the use of guns. And unfortunately, we still have the tragedies where you have the gun that you forgot about, the child finds the gun, and we have an awful situation now. Whether it's an accidental shooting or that gun now finds its way into the hands of gang members, we have an unfortunate situation. And I think that, in my opinion, we have kids, everyone, it's not just kids, adults, guns are too accessible, okay? And I know that everyone, they don't agree with me, but guns are too accessible. When you have 15-year-old kids, when you have 14-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids, if they have the ability to get a gun, whether the gun is from their parents, whether the gun is from their friends, whether their gun is from underground trade, whatever it is, guns are too accessible. Add to the fact that now we have these violent video games, and now kids are desensitized to violence, desensitized to serious injuries. Some don't even understand that guns produce serious injury, which sometimes, death, that's not something you're going to recover from.
I hear what you're saying. I'm thinking at the same time, when you play those video games, you're shooting a zombie or a robot. Well, those still are human-like people, and you're shooting with an AK-47, bazooka, etc. And it's amazing to me. It goes far beyond a simple right at that point. And when you get to a point of people can't own bazookas, there's a reason that there's a limit to it.
Right, right. And if you look at the psychological studies, the mind and how a 13-year-old analyzes a situation is quite different than how a 21-year-old would analyze a situation.
Well, last question then. Mental health issues. We got to put both questions together. But mental health issues, is that one of the biggest challenges you're seeing now? Is while people are coming to you have to defend them, and they have some other challenges.
Yes.
The sad part is people probably could have seen it before it happened, but we kind of push them to the side. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it, and all of a sudden, something bad happens.
Right. You have a lot of times when we go into clients' histories, you have a situation where, of course, the family couldn't afford counseling, or the medication involved, or they're not aware of the resources that are available in the community. So you have that situation. You have situations where people were never properly diagnosed. And then you have just, it's a new environment. You know, when you look at our world today and the stressors and the fact that we're always turned on,
Right.
always turned on, that affects the mental health of individuals. And then the fact that, you know, I mentioned earlier trauma and families being torn apart, that also affects the mental health of an individual.
But does the department have any other prevention or intervention programs?
Yes, in fact, we have a program called MAP, Making Attendance a Priority. It is a collaboration with San Bernardino City Schools. And basically, in our office, we have social workers. And so we receive referrals, SARB, Special Attendance Review Board, and our social workers will go into a household and identify the factors that may lead to truancy. Sometimes the factors is as simple as children sleeping on the floor. You know, they're just tired when they get up in the mornings. Well, we have access to resources such as Children's Fund. We can ask Children's Fund to purchase bed for the family so that now children can have a bed to sleep in. So those are the little things. So you know how you hear the saying, little things add up.
Right.
Well, those are types of little things that can help support a student attendance in school. And so we're looking at expanding that program and bringing that program out to the high desert. And right now we are speaking with Victor Valley Union High School District, and we're trying to do more of a collaborative effort in a sense that we're not really a unified school district, so we want to have the high school district and an elementary school district involved, because when you deal with truancy, you want to attack the behavior before it becomes habitual.
Okay.
So that means if we can attack the behavior in younger children, then the schools benefit in that now they have the child's attention in elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Phyllis, I want to thank you for coming to our show today. If you want somebody who's knowledgeable about the law, you want somebody who's passionate and determined, and trust me, if you ever get in trouble, this is the kind of person you want to help you out of it. So I want to thank you and keep doing the great work you're doing for our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.